will start a share screen here. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Recall, this is the first of two meetings today. This is the 8th regular meeting of the 2020-2021 Senate, our final meeting of the year. And immediately upon the conclusion of this meeting, we will have a special meeting of next year's Senate to elect Senate Executive Committee members. Let's see here. There we go. Reminder, the meeting is being recorded. Second reminder, I sent out an updated agenda this morning. If you're referring to one of the ones I sent out, make sure it's the most recent one. It was sent, I don't know, 8 o'clock-ish, 9 o'clock-ish this morning. The only changes on it were additions to CNR agenda and inclusion of a couple of additional reports from Senate level committees. To make it easy to keep track of, those additions are shown in red. Another point of order, since receiving the report from Student Grievance Committee, they actually have been contacted about hearing a grievance. So that report that is attached is not accurate. Wanted to give a little update on the strategic planning initiative from the Senate point of view. I've had a couple of folks sending questions asking about a couple issues, one of which we'll discuss at some length under new business.
Hey, Matt, can I interrupt for just 1 second? I don't think you're recording.
Oh, let's see here. I may have to stop sharing to get into the record. There we go.
Okay.
Are we on now, Kevin? I assume that was Kevin. Should be recording now. So yes, now the meeting is being recorded. Just a quick repeat of the reminders I said before we started recording. Updated agenda was sent out this morning, and the student grievance report that's attached to these minutes is not accurate. That report says they had no cases this year, and I've been informed over the weekend they received a request to hear a grievance. I have wanted to give a little update on strategic planning initiative from the point of view of Senate. I have had several people send me emails asking questions about process, what has been happening and what's happening going forth. Recall that we started off with a very small group, me, Chris Jones as Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, President Standiford, and Aaron Buchko, trying to begin the process. After we had met a few times, a much larger, more representative committee was set up. That larger committee has representatives of the board, the administration, and faculty on it. The exact list of who's on that committee is available on the strategic planning website. We have also involved an external consultant. They've been providing data for consideration by the this larger group of members from the university community. That larger group has been considering that data, coming up with recommendations based upon it. Those recommendations are going to be forwarded to the University Strategic Planning Committee very soon. University Strategic Planning Committee then is going to fill out the roughly 3 to 4 central ideas that this other committee has come up with. Just as a note, the Strategic Planning Committee will be meeting up until about the middle of June to deal with this. And the university has recognized that faculty are not under contract during that period and has agreed to compensate faculty members who are not under contract for their contributions during the summer. At the end of the, so this will be one phase of the involvement of the University Strategic Planning Committee. Their recommendations then will go back to this other larger representative community, which includes board members. And hopefully that committee will finish up its work about a week after the University Strategic Planning finishes its work. And hopefully we'll have something to show at the end of the summer to present to the entire campus community. One of the questions, which we'll discuss later under news business, is the degree to which Senate wishes to be involved over the summer. And I didn't feel that it was appropriate for a smaller group than the Senate to make a decision about their involvement. So we'll have a discussion of that under new business. Does anybody have any questions about my spin on what's been happening with strategic planning? Hearing none, I would consider a motion for the approval of the minutes of the 7th regular meeting.
So moved, Teresa Drake.
Thank you, Teresa. Second?
Second.
So I'll second Burl George.
Thank you, Burl. Any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. Hearing the no-nos, the ayes have it. So thank you very much. Is our outgoing student body president, Emma Hoytia, on?
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. I don't have any formal report or anything. A couple of things that I was just thinking about as we walk into the next year is, I know everyone's moving over to Canvas, so best of luck to those of you that haven't moved over yet. Students are very excited about that. So I'm thankful for the work that you guys will be putting in this summer to move over there. I know a lot of us are, quite well versed in it. So either feel free to reach out to me or your students to hear kind of what worked, what didn't. I know some teachers really got into it, really got really particular about how they set up their modules and how they set up due dates and the calendar and all those types of things. Some of it is worth it, some of it isn't. So feel free to reach out to students. I think all of us would be very willing to share our thoughts on that. And overall, just a big thank you to everybody for making it through this year. I know students get so much of the I want to say limelight or the voice of hearing how difficult this year has been and people saying, oh, students are really going through it. Professors and faculty, staff, everyone went through so much this year. And I'm really thankful and so proud of all of you. As strange as that might sound, I'm just very thankful for the year that we were able to have. I am no longer going to be the president moving into next year. I moved into the position of Speaker of the Assembly for Student Senate. I am a junior and will be a senior next year, so I'll still be around. You guys can't get rid of me quite yet, so feel free to shoot me an email if you need anything. But I also have invited Erin Boschek, our incoming student body president, to this meeting today to introduce herself and so you guys can get to know her a little bit. So Erin, are you on the call?
I am.
Wonderful. Why don't you give them a little rundown of who you are?
Perfect. So I am the incoming student body president. I am going into my senior year of electrical engineering and I'm minoring in biology. I'm from this area and I transferred into Bradley fall of 2019. I'm really looking forward to working with everybody in the University Senate.
She's really awesome. And quite honestly, we are to some degree carbon copies of each other. So best of luck to you guys for having a try number 2 with that. And yes, she really is just an incredible person. And I think it's such a it speaks so much to Bradley students in general that not only a commuter student, but a transfer student loves Bradley enough to put herself in this position. And she was part of Student Senate this past year, so she's definitely not coming in just off the street. So she knows what she's doing, and she's going to do an awesome job. But like I said, there is continuity here, so I will continue to, I look forward to being able to come to University Senate meetings and stay in touch with the things that you guys do. So if you have any questions for me moving through the summer, Erin and I will both be working very hard this summer and continuing on with work on Senate related things. So thank you, everybody.
I think we should give Emma a round of applause to express our appreciation for the work she's done this past year. So thank you.
Being able to, I was just going to say, I like to only be able to hear the audible clapping from Dr. Tim over there. It's very welcome. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Emma. And Erin, welcome aboard. I look forward to working with you next year. All right. We have a massive number of consent agenda items on the see it from CNR. I'm going to scroll slowly through them. Again, you may have looked at the items in black font when I sent out the original version of the agenda about a week ago. To highlight the additions, they are in red font. Oh, some of the things, the different types of CNR items typically have a blue header on them too. So that's what the blue is signifying. Anyway, I'm going to scroll through these fairly slowly. If anybody wants to pull out a particular item, let me know. So here's the first slide. Few more core curriculum additions on the next slide. Quite a large number of course additions. Next slide, these were added on this morning. A few course deletions. I don't believe there were any additions to this category this morning. And then a large number of course modifications. Most of these were sent out a week ago, but again, we'll go slowly through here. Fairly slowly. Here's the ones that were sent out this morning. That's the end of the consent agenda. One more call. Was there anything on the consent agenda that anyone would like to consider separately? Hearing no such requests, we will consider the consent agenda approved. We do need motions for these. I guess I would like to do each type of motion, each type of change or addition separately. So I would begin with a
Matt, if this is a consent agenda, then it doesn't need extra votes.
These are program changes and additions. This isn't a consent agenda anymore. We've been voting on program changes. We could change that, but perhaps not today. In the fall, we'll consider that, or the next Senate can consider that. So I would entertain a motion to approve these concentration deletions.
So moved. Ahmad.
Thank you, Ahmad. Second, please. Oh, these are coming out of committee. We don't need a second. All those in favor of approving the concentration deletions, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries. I will entertain a motion to approve the concentration modifications that are listed here.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving these concentration modifications, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carry. The concentration modifications are approved. We have one major addition. I will entertain a motion for the major addition.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the major modification, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve this collection of major modifications.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Glad you're here today. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving these major modifications, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries. We have one minor modification. Oh, I did not delete Owen's name. Sorry, Owen. I will entertain a motion to approve the minor modification in CS, computer game technology.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. I will entertain a motion to approve these two program additions.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the program addition, say aye. All opposed? Say no. I guess silence means no. The program additions are approved. We have 3 program deletions. I'll hear a motion to approve those program deletions.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The motion carries. Last but not least, we have 5 program modifications. I'll entertain a motion to approve those program modifications.
So moved.
Thank you, Ahmad. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. I think that is it. It is. All right. There are a number of reports attached for your reading pleasure. The ones that were attached this morning were ones that were submitted after I sent out the agenda by Equity and Diversity, TP&D, and I've listed Senate Exec twice. So my wife just snuck in through our back door. I believe there was some interest from international initiatives to give a little bit of a verbal report. Is Jeannie Bukowski on the call?
Yes. Would there be, and I promised to keep it short, Matt. He told me I could have 5 minutes, so I'll try to
5
keep it
minutes.
under that.
3 strategic planning initiatives, 5 minutes for the report.
Could I share my screen?
You can. I will stop my share.
Okay. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, let me full screen this. Can everybody see this? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Like I said, I will be brief, but we do have some things to report that I think would be of interest to the campus community more broadly. So this is the second year of existence for this committee. I do want to thank the very dedicated faculty and staff across campus who have devoted so much time to this first 2 years. This is the current membership. There are a few other people who rotated off last year for various reasons. So just thank you so much to everybody this is a remarkable committee who are all very, very committed to global education at Bradley. So just very briefly, we have over our 2 years of operation, we've identified several challenges for global education at Bradley. Despite the fact that we do a lot across campus, those efforts tend to be fairly isolated, fairly siloed, uncoordinated, not sufficiently resourced, recognized, prioritized. And that's largely because we have a fairly long history at Bradley of a lack of strategic vision on the part of upper level administration. That has been the case for multiple years at Bradley. And so our efforts are significant and comparable favorably to what other universities do, but they tend to be fragmented. So that does disadvantage us in several important ways, including in recruitment, including in just having a campus environment that is not as diverse, not as cross-culturally aware in terms of how it really should be, in an era where this is an increasingly critical atmosphere to have in a globalized world. So we do our students a disservice if this is not the case. So I'm not going to go over this in detail, but this is something that we have identified as well, that there's kind of a vicious cycle. And I'm sure we could say this about other areas of Bradley, but the historic lack of commitment results in lack of coordination, lack of resourcing, lack of promotion. So then that means that we can't attract the students that we would like to attract. Then low numbers in classes or programs end up resulting in cuts that, to crucial areas that could help us actually build global. So we've been working on an inventory of all of the many global programs, curricular and co-curricular across campus. And it's just been invaluable for the committee members to be from all areas of the campus across all colleges. And functions related to global education. So we've actually managed to make some progress on these challenges with the support and the expertise and the effort of staff and faculty and leadership colleagues across the university. We've been able to address some of these challenges. The first thing that we would like to highlight is that with the support of the Office of Marketing and Communications and the support and hard work and creativity of Ome Lopez in that office, we now have a global Bradley website. It, as of April 19th, is also featured on the About. This is just a screenshot of this. So you go to the About link on the main navigation page and you scroll down a little ways, and this is what Ome came up with for us with input from the committee. It's beautiful. We are so grateful to Ome for her hard work. I would encourage everybody, if you haven't seen this yet, when you click on the Learn More, that will take you to a page that we worked with Ome to create that is called now the Global Bradley page. And it highlights all of the curricular and co-curricular opportunities under academic programs and international student functions and things like the Global Living and Learning Community. And so I encourage you to look at that because it's all and Global Scholars programs. So it's all in one place. So we really think that this is a very positive step for promoting and supporting Global Bradley. And we thank everybody who's been involved in making that possible. The other thing that we just recently got news on is that this was something we worked on a great deal this year. We submitted a proposal for a new entity on campus that would function to redress the disjointed and unsupported nature of global education at BU. And we just recently received approval from the senior leadership team to establish this new Office of Global Studies and Initiatives. So the goal of this office will be to help coordinate and promote and highlight and defend and grow global education efforts at Bradley. It will be directed by a faculty member and will report to the Vice President for Strategy and Innovation, Chris Jones, who has informed us that an interim director will be named for academic year 21-22, and that a campus-wide announcement with more details will be forthcoming. The committee really wishes to thank President Standiford and Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Zakaki, and Vice President for Strategy and Innovation, Chris Jones, and the entire senior leadership team for their support in these initiatives and of global education. And we really think this finally represents an important turning point for the university in terms of global education. So you all have the committee's deep gratitude. And then finally, I'm not going to go over these in detail, but I just wanted to highlight the recommendations that we have made in this report. Some of them kind of carry over from last year's report, and they do involve the various components of global education. I do want to focus just briefly on recommendation 1, though, because this is something that illustrates one of these challenges that we have identified. And that is that last year in the report to Senate, we urged caution in terms of proposals that would break down the ability of crucial units to achieve the goal of global education at Bradley. And that vicious cycle that we refer to, we see this happening with world languages and cultures. Long story short, and there is more detail in the report, because of the involuntary separation program and some other cuts, world languages and cultures has been less able to offer some crucial languages. And we, again, really just want to urge caution in this as we're trying to build something up that we think can be really monumental for the university, that we don't get into the vicious cycle of cutting crucial components of that aspect of global education. So again, thank you to everybody on the committee, senior leadership for starting to move us in the right direction. And I think I stayed in my 5 minutes. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Let me get rid of the share screen. Whoops. Sorry about that. Stop share. Okay.
There you go. Let me put the agenda back up.
Hey, Matt, when you do that, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to make a comment right now or not, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Jeannie and the entire team. The proposal for the new office was outstanding. I mean, just really outstanding. The amount of work that the group put together to create a very comprehensive plan on how to bring together all the amazing things we're doing in a global space, but are not coordinated. I just say that was extremely well done. So congratulations to you and the entire team for the work that you put together.
Thank you. What I was going to ask was if anyone had any questions or comments. So, in fact, if folks have questions or comments about any of the reports, feel free to speak now or later in the meeting, or if you want, you can always send comments to Senate Exec.
Burl George, I have from CEC, I have a question. How would this committee impact the departmental planning for courses that are going to be offered overseas?
I don't really think the main purpose of the committee, Burl, has been to try to inventory and highlight what we do that is global. So in terms of courses that Bradley faculty would be offering overseas, I think that's an important component of it. We would mainly be identifying and promoting. And the other thing I guess I wanted to say kind of along those lines too, is when people look at the website, we put that together in terms of what we were able to, as a committee, identify across campus, but there may be things we're missing. We're not intending to exclude anything from promotion on that website. So I would highly encourage if anybody has programs, course content, or specifically programs, especially academic programs that have significant global content, please let me know, and we'll make sure that also gets highlighted on the website. But just in terms of course content, one of the things that we're hoping to do, for example, we're going to have a panel at the Fall Forum. We're going to really encourage and increase an awareness of the Global Scholars Program. This is more on campus, so I don't think that's really Burl's question. But maybe for people who want to offer courses overseas, we could facilitate making that happen, right? We could have people who've already done that get together with people who would like to. So it's very much a facilitation function.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question, Matt. Dan Matissa, Theater.
Yeah, Dan.
Is it okay if I jump to a different, to
that's
Jay
fine.
there? Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a question for the Tenure Promotion and Dismissal Committee. Reading their annual report regarding the faculty member who filed the appeal. And at the bottom, it says the recommendation of the committee is that the individual be immediately reinstated to their original tenure track position. And my question is, what happens now? Whose court is this ball in, and what are the next steps?
Hi there, Twyla Lakoviak. I'm co-chair of the Tenure Promotion and Dismissal Committee. I can answer your question. With this particular situation, there was an agreement between the faculty member and upper administration. So it looks like that situation has ended on a positive note.
Thank you very much. And congratulations to Christian on graduation. He was one of my acting students.
Any other questions, comments? I'd like to point out the reason that the Sabbatical Leave Committee did not meet this year was because, if you recall, the sabbaticals that were granted a year ago were not honored this year. And they are going to be honored, at least at present, assuming things keep going in a positive direction. The sabbaticals that were granted for this year are actually going to be allowed to happen next year. And so there was no need for the Sabbatical Leave Committee to meet. I would say faculty grievance was lucky in terms of they didn't have to meet. That's always good news when there's no grievances filed. Any other questions about the reports? Hearing none. Let me see what's next. I forget. Old business, we have none. Under new business, I wanted to get a feel from the Senate about the level of Senate involvement over the summer in terms of strategic planning. At one point, there had been some discussion about having some additional forums over the summer to present reports from the various committees involved. And I didn't feel, none of the folks within the smaller group felt comfortable making that decision without getting some input from Senate. I have a feeling about it, but I'd like to hear what other folks think first. Are folks interested in getting reports out from these committees in a more formal setting, having Senate meetings like we did last summer? Should we do it informally? I'm going to stop my screen share so I can see more of folks as they want to talk. Anybody have a strong opinion one way or the other on this?
Personally,
Go ahead,
personally, it's Twyla. Personally, I'm always willing to make myself available for such important issues. So I would be more than happy to meet in a formal setting if need be. So my vote would be definitely yes.
Cecile Arquette, I would also vote yes. Of course, obviously it would depend on people's different situations, but if we're doing it online, you know, even if we're out of town, that might be a possibility for us to stop in for an hour or two and meet.
I think Senate involvement, this is Danielle, Senate involvement is crucial.
I would agree. This is Jeannie. I think we should be involved, especially given the schedule of this is not going to stop over the summer. So I think Senate should probably be active as well.
I'm going to say the obvious here. Remember, folks are not under contract. And we, in an emergency situation, did this last summer. My question, I think, for the group is it still an emergency situation, or Senate is going to be involved through participation of the Strategic Planning Committee, and the members of that committee are going to be compensated. So there is faculty representation, faculty input into the process. There's also faculty representation on the steering committee. So there is faculty input. The faculty are represented on those two committees. And so I really think the question is about, are we going down a dangerous path here, continuing to have official meetings of the Senate over the summer? And I'm quite concerned about that, actually.
Matt, last summer, were the meetings information only, or did we have voting meetings?
They were informational only.
Okay.
We did not conduct any business. And I think mostly, if these are going to happen this summer, they will mostly be forums for folks to get information, both directions, both for the committees involved to get input from the campus community and for the campus community to hear what the current state of affairs is. So I'm not anticipating any voting at these meetings coming up this summer.
So Matt, would they be Senate meetings, or would they be forums that are maybe hosted by, or, you know, what are we going to call it, hosted by Senate? Are they just kind of Q&A sessions?
That is probably ultimately an issue for the 2021-2022 Senate Executive Committee to decide exactly what they would be called. But just as a member of Senate, I'm thinking that they would be forums for informational gathering. They wouldn't information flow for the faculty and to give some, and Senate to give some input into give input to these committees, and then to hear their reports.
Matt, this is Kevin Kimberlin in physics. You know, I would say we would argue that we probably are still in an emergency situation, in the sense that we're still in COVID, number one, as far as online classes this summer, et cetera, et cetera. number two, would you expect to have a quorum then in order to have these meetings or not?
If they're not, again, I don't, well, again, this is my present impression. I don't think these would be meetings at which formal votes are taken. They would be mostly to provide information, going both directions. To the
So,
committee and from
yeah.
the committee. So you wouldn't need a quorum to have the meeting.
So in that case, the people that are interested in attending could attend, and, you could still maybe hold your standard of no meetings, and your slippery slope might not really be that slippery in the case of, if you're not requiring a quorum, people could come as they please. But that's my input. I'd be happy to come this summer, and I agree with you, maybe should be revisited after this is over, whether we want to have formal meetings in the summer or not. I would say not in general, but this summer is a little different perhaps. Thank you.
Nope.
Matt, if I may, just because there's some questions around the forum and such, Chris Jones and I talked about this earlier today. Look, we're happy to host forums, and honestly, if 2 people show up, great. We can have a conversation with 2 people. If 200 people show up, we're fine with that as well. So to the question of quorum, from our perspective, we're just happy to share with anybody who's interested. And whether that's 2 or 200, that's fine. And recognize that people may or may not be able to attend. And would be comfortable doing a couple to give people different options as well. So we can be really, really flexible. There's no perception on our end that it would need to be of a certain number. Just want to make ourselves available. Chris, did I capture that right from the conversation you and I had?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Are there other comments? I guess what I'm hearing is folks are generally in favor of having, you can call them forums if you want, over the summer to share information. Does anybody, Kevin's argument as to why this is perhaps not a slippery slope may be convincing. But what I'm hearing is folks generally sound like they're in favor of having a few forums over the summer for information sharing, and at least all of the current Senate exec members are here. I don't think any of us will forget that. And Meg Frazier has in the chat for information sharing. I think she probably wanted to put a couple of explanation points after that, but did not. Sound good?
Library faculty is here 12 months, so it's.
I don't know who that was. Your volume was not good. I'm at home and my screen is too small to get a large number of folks up. All right. Oh, true. All right, let me go back to the agenda. So I have to share screen. I think it's just reports from administrators that we have left to deal with today.
Great.
Yeah. Before I turn this over to President Standiford, if you look through the list of participants and do not see newly elected members to Senate from your unit, please send them an email. It would be nice to have a quorum at the special meeting of the 2021-2022 Senate, which will occur shortly. And how shortly or how soon that will be, of course, depends upon how long-winded our administrators are today. So President Standiford, the floor is yours.
Trying to figure out if that was an invitation to talk a lot or not, Matt. I'm not sure. So
well, it depends whether we get a quorum or not. I see that I don't think our newly elected math senator is on, so I'm going to send him an email.
All right. Well, I'll share a few comments, and then we can obviously just engage in conversation and have comments along the way. First, I want to say congratulations on getting really close to finishing out the year. And I realized I was out on the quad today, a really nice event that the nursing program put on with our music program for some kind of mental relief with music and snow cones for study day. But it was a real sign that we're very, very close. And I just want to say, I want to begin by saying, most importantly, thank you for all the heavy, heavy work involved in getting us to this point in the semester. It has been, I think I can safely say, like the strangest year ever for just about everybody here. I thought Emma did a really nice job of acknowledging that we know it's been rough on our students. We've gotten the feedback from them on that and tried to do what we can to make it more manageable. But it's been rough on everybody. And yet, here we are, really close to the end of the year. And I'm knocking on wood as I say it, because I'm looking at Nathan, because we've talked several times about we can't celebrate yet because we're not done, but it's beginning to look like we're going to close out the year successfully, having operated in really some of the most challenging environments. So I just wanted to begin by saying a most sincere thank you to everybody for all the tremendous heavy lift that I know has happened this year. This weekend was kind of strange for me. This would not have necessarily been obvious to everybody, but my contract officially started May 1 a year ago. So I actually passed my 1-year anniversary on Saturday. And I got to say, it is the weirdest presidential transition I think I've ever seen because so many of you I still have not met in person, which is just really, really weird. I've had a chance to meet some of you, and I really enjoyed the random opportunities to run into people from time to time, but it's not been normal. But I got to say, it's been a thrill and an honor to serve as the president this last year and to be able to work with you all. And one of the things that I share externally whenever I can is I often get the question of, wow, what a strange year. What was that like? And I'll say, well, it was strange, just like it was for everybody else, but it was also pretty remarkable because I've long held, so my background is strategy and org theory. And I've long held that if you really want to understand an organization, watch it operate in crisis. That's when you really get to understand the character of an organization and the character of the people in the organization. I heard somebody say the other day, gosh, I can't remember who this was. It was a great statement. I need to remember who it was so I can give them credit. It might have been from our HLC review team that basically said, you know, that the old statement is crisis builds character. He said that's actually wrong. Crisis reveals character. And the crisis we've been in has really revealed the character of the organization. And it's been incredibly impressive to watch. The way we've been able to move forward on a number of things, despite the tremendous challenges, has been remarkable. You know, it's interesting, I was thinking about this a little bit, and it is in some ways, it's in our foundational history, right? I mean, you've all heard me talk about this before, about how our founder went through the most challenging of times and then yet had phenomenal success. And what I get excited about is us now coming out of this crisis and using the next couple of years to lay the foundation for the next 125 years of the university. And I think we're in really, really good position to do that. This year's been an interesting one. As I said, there's been a variety of ups and downs. One of the things that I thought was really a trying and telling moment for us is when we had a significant outbreak of the virus last semester, ended up going into quarantine. And I know at that point, there were a lot of questions. I hear there was various polls going on in the students as to when we were going to formally tell everybody to go home. I'm aware of those polls, and I'm glad to say pretty much everybody lost because we didn't send anybody home. And that's a compliment to a large extent to our students. They really stepped up and did what we needed to do to be successful. And I want to give them a shout out as part of that. We learned a lot, we pivoted, and we were able to actually get through the year successfully. And, or I almost don't want to say it. Up till now, we've been able to get through the year successfully, and barring some unforeseen circumstance, I'm almost quasi-superstitious about this, we will get through the semester successfully. And really excited that in a week and a half, we're actually going to do in-person graduations. They'll be different. I think you all have heard we're doing, I'm not even using the term mask to mask, face-to-face, I'm using the term mask to mask, but they will be in person. We're going to do 7 of them spread out over 3 days so that we can do the appropriate spacing and physical distancing, masking, and appropriately set up for COVID compliance, but really excited that that's something we can do. So that's, I think, that'll be a great punctuation point for us to talk about having gotten through the year by being able to be in operation throughout the year. And that's something we should get really excited about. I want to talk a little bit about another piece that played out perhaps differently than what we thought. As we went into the pandemic last year, there were lots of predictions about where enrollment might go. And you all know that there was predictions that enrollment might drop as much as 20%. I mean, there were doom and gloom stories all over the place about what was going to happen to enrollments. I believe, and if Justin's on here and I get any of these numbers wrong, Justin, you're going to jump in and correct me, please, in real time. But I believe in the final analysis, we had about a 4% drop last year over the prior year. And going into a pandemic, that's obviously no drop would have been better, but 4% is much better than we anticipated. Is way off of the 20% that I think a lot of people were projecting. And what's interesting is, we talked earlier in the semester as we started seeing the deposit numbers come in, that we anticipated, and Justin Ball, our VP of Enrollment Services, has been on this from day one, saying, be careful about paying attention to any numbers right now, because everything's running late and everybody's getting off to a slower start. Well, we begin to see those numbers begin to turn around. I know many of you look at the EMBO reports, and I think on Monday we reported 940 deposits or something like that. And what's interesting is the numbers are actually, it was complicated because those are off of Friday, but actually May 1 was on Saturday. And that is a key date when a lot of students will be making their deposits. And I believe our current numbers are 1,041, which gets us really close to where we were in our pre-pandemic numbers. We're not completely back yet, but we're absolutely moving in the right direction. And I'm really thrilled. I know there has been phenomenal effort all over campus to try to make sure this class comes together. I don't think there's a corner on campus that wasn't involved in one way or another of making that happen. And I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody. I got to keep them. So I know there's going to be a lot of work over the summer in terms of getting orientations together and such to make sure that the class comes together successfully. But I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody. That has worked. Heavy lift, but it has worked well so far. And I'm really excited about where we're headed. I want to talk about something kind of related to that. One of the things we did on the to really be thoughtful about our fall class, and I've gotten some feedback there that there was some perhaps edginess and some controversy to it. And as a result, I thought I'd kind of step into it and talk about it a little bit, and happy to answer any questions about this. Our CFO, Cheryl Cox, who's done a phenomenal job of helping us get a really good sense of our financial situation, did an interview with Public Radio. I thought she did a really fantastic job. And we gotten some pushback on that, some frustrations from folks for a couple reasons. And I thought I'd mention a little bit about what we were thinking about in having Cheryl actually have that conversation. It was a very, actually literally one of the terms I got as feedback, and I appreciate this, is it was a very businessy type conversation. And I got to tell you, that was a little bit by design. And one of the things that happened is, as we were looking at the enrollment this year, we were talking to various parents. And there were two different occasions where I had parents ask me whether the university was financially viable. And I got to tell you, I was mildly shocked by that, because I have a good sense of where we're at financially, and we're not where I want us to be yet, but we're absolutely viable. And that's not a concern, and it's never really been a concern. But when we got those questions, and then you do a media search, if you did a media search, you could begin to see why those questions might be emerging, because of the earlier concerns around how we might have a 20% drop in enrollment, might be a $40 million deficit. I mean, these were the pieces that were out in the media. So we felt it was pretty important that we change that dialogue a little bit to let people know that, no, we are financially viable. And quite frankly, me getting out and saying that, which I do with some regularity, is not nearly as convincing as our CFO getting out and making that same conversation. So Cheryl was very kind to get out and have some of those conversations for us. I think that really did have an impact on our ability to close some deals and convince some families that we are in fact in strong financial position. On that front, there's something that we introduced, the months go by fast. I'm trying to remember how many months ago it was, on something called the Bradley Briefing, where I do a little bit of an update as to what's going on campus. And I wanted to give you a snapshot of, it's going to come out tomorrow is the next one. And I wanted to give you a snapshot. I'm literally going to read exactly what comes out just so you get a preview because it gives you a sense a little bit about the finances. In April 2020, the university faced an estimated operating deficit of nearly 10 million. By the end of 2020, the estimated operating deficit was roughly cut in half with detailed financial planning and cost containment. Today, the university's finances are immensely improved with an expected balanced budget for fiscal year 2023. We're not there yet. We've still got some work to do, but we're getting close. That's actually not in the note, but my own addition there. In addition, Bradley's manageable endowment assets have grown more than 30% in the past 5 years to 350 million. And I thought it was really important that we start getting this message out because we've had to make some really tough decisions. And I know many of you have been a part of working hard to operate in an increasingly shrinking financial environment, but we're making a lot of headway. And I can see a path forward now that gets us on strong financial footing. And I just want to give you a sense that we're making significant progress on that. One of the questions I get a lot is when are we going to have detailed financials? And one of the things we've talked about doing with the Board of Trustees, in fact, the Board of Trustees is going to be voting on a revised schedule next Friday. And henceforth, what we're going to do is we'll have some preliminary budget conversations with the trustees at the meeting on Friday in May, but we won't have a finalized budget until September. And we actually changed our trustee meeting dates so that our meeting in September comes after census. And when we report the budget, it will be a finalized budget based on actual revenues. And that's kind of industry best practice, and it's something we get pretty excited about. So what I'm planning to do is we are going to start instituting, I think this will be new, it's probably come out in different formats before, but after that census day, I plan to do a state of the university address where I'll walk through all of our financials, where we're at, where we landed with enrollment, and provide far, far more detail than we've been able to provide up till now. But I feel very confident that in fall, as we come into census and have those detailed, we have that detailed data, we'll be able to give out really accurate information on where we're at financially as an institution. But as a preview of coming attraction, we're definitely moving in the right direction. And the deficit is much more manageable than it was before. And happy to answer more questions about that if anybody has any specific questions. So I'm looking at my notes here. I was going to talk a little bit about the strategic planning process, but Matt did, I thought, a really outstanding job of summarizing that. So I don't feel the need to go back through that. I can answer any questions that you may have. And I saw that Chris Jones is in the meeting as well and can chime in with answer some questions if you got them. But that's really was going to be the essence of what I was going to share. Again, I just want to say a most sincere thank you for perseverance and patience in this weirdest of years ever. And I think both of those have been hallmarks of how we've gotten through the year. We've persevered and we've been patient as we've worked through a number of things. I wish you the very best in closing out the semester. And we're going to do I don't think we're going to call it end of summer assembly. I think we're going to call it a welcome back ceremony and welcome people back in the fall. And I got to tell you, I'm looking so forward to meeting many of you in person for the first time. There was if you read the Scout on April Fool's Day, there was I have to say I laughed myself when there was an article about squirrels working with the hologram Standiford as secret spies. And I thought that is kind of entertaining because so many of the students have never seen me. As far as they know, I am a hologram. And I'm actually looking forward to meeting many of you in person as we're able to do so. But again, thank you for a really amazing year under the most challenging of circumstances, and wishing you all the very best as we finish things out.
President Standiford?
Yeah.
Megan Rummel and Poli Sci. When we got that email surveying about mandatory vaccines, I was surprised. This entire school year, the administration has been sort of championing the idea of following the science, and public opinion is not following the science. It seems to me that what is happening at most schools is that there seems to be an acceleration of schools announcing that they're going to require the vaccine. And so I was trying to understand what the thought process was behind the survey and where we stand on that.
It's a great question. The survey finishes, I think, I saw Nathan on here earlier. I think it's tomorrow or yeah, tomorrow. I see him nodding again. Tomorrow, to be clear, and you know, it's interesting, Megan, because I've gotten some questions from some parents as well around, you know, why are we suggesting we're going to require the vaccine? And that was not what the survey was intended to signal. One of the things we are trying to do is collect data in a scientific way, quite frankly, around how many people have actually gotten the vaccine. And that will help inform us as to, you know, are we at a threshold where, in fact, the senior leadership team has talked about this extensively, as has the virus response team. And we have consciously not made the decision yet. This isn't one of those that we've kicked it down the can. We are waiting for the science to evolve on this a little bit more. So to your point, we are trying to continue to follow the science, and the science on this continues to evolve. Christy, I saw you on mic, and I know there's probably nobody following the science closer on this than you are.
Well, that,
So
man,
I'm glad you're willing to come in.
I just wondered what you meant by that, following the science. What science is still awaiting us before we make the decision?
So one of the things would be how many people are actually already vaccinated, because there's a threshold at which if 95% of our folks are vaccinated anyway, that would perhaps influence whether requiring the vaccine would actually make a difference. And so that's a key part of the data. And actually, our inclination is that it's far more than we anticipated have already gotten the vaccination. And so that's something we're waiting to see the data come in on that. And that would be informative for us.
I'm sorry, President Sandiford. That just seems like a very odd response to me, that other universities are making this decision.
Right.
There's going to be a significant number of incoming freshmen who I'm assuming are not being surveyed in this. So that's going to dilute the percentage of people on campus who are vaccinated. I know that the state of Illinois is the reason why things like the meningococcal vaccine are required. And that hasn't come from the state, but it just seems odd to me to be using, because if I remember correctly, and I took the survey several weeks ago, so I could be misremembering, but it seemed like, if I remember correctly, there was a question down at the bottom about, do you think vaccines should be mandatory? And that is, to me, not a legitimate question to be asking the vast majority of us to answer. I don't think we're qualified for that answer. And it seems to me that the scientific consensus is that vaccines are incredibly important. And even if you have that 95% threshold, there's still a number of people who are going to get sick, who can't have the vaccinations. So to me, it seems that we need to do the absolute most to ensure that the most number of people on campus that is incredibly possible is vaccinated.
I think we're in close agreement on all this than you realize, Megan. Part of the reason we want that question answered is if we know this is not where the number is going to play out, by the way, I'd be willing to bet my house on it. But if 50% of our population came out and said they were viscerally opposed to vaccination, that question doesn't get to whether does the vaccine make science or not. It helps us think about how we respond to getting as many people vaccinated as possible. So that's more of a operational, what do we do? In fact, as we were talking about it, we were looking through the survey when it was initially going through. That question came in really to help us think about next steps on getting as many people vaccinated as possible. And part of that would be to get a sense of how many people are highly resistant to getting the vaccination. So that piece was not about science. That piece was about how do we actually get a sense of where the community's at so we can figure out how to move forward. Nathan, am I describing that accurate based on the conversations we've had? I mean, you and Dr. Higgs and I are the ones that really kind of map some of that out.
Yeah, and to Megan's point, we recognize the challenge of the question, and felt it appropriate that we needed to ask the question. There are, I think, 200 plus, according to the Chronicle, that have made the decision that they're going to require vaccines, and many of them have some sort of caveat behind it, whether it be continual testing or other parameters for individuals that don't or are not vaccinated. And so, part of what we have to pay attention to is the science, but what buts do people have in their policies? And there are a number of them. For example, the University of Illinois announced last week, I think, that they are going to not necessarily require the vaccine, but if you're not vaccinated, then you have to be in their testing protocol every single week. And so that's part of what we have to look at. But to the point of the question, it was a question that we felt we needed to ask, knowing that it was probably a little bit loaded in asking it as well.
Somebody just messaged me and let me know that apparently that survey, you could take it more than once, and that it wasn't prohibiting people from taking it more than once, and that several people didn't know how to notify, or that the people that they contacted about notifying this didn't know who was in charge of the survey. So now I'm concerned that the even quality of the responses is not trustworthy.
I'll have to look at that further, Megan. That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
President Sandberg, can I make just a couple comments on your admissions numbers really quickly?
Please, I was hoping you'd catch anything I missed on that, Justin.
Yeah, wonderful. I think you had a lot of that data right. Again, the reports that came out on Monday were the April 30th data, and we'll release the May 1st and then May 7th data next Monday. But a really important point to remember as you look at those, and specifically as we share them with deans and department chairs for planning purposes, was that in 2020, we, along with a vast majority of both private and public institutions across the country, utilized June 1st as our admissions decision deadline. And so you will see, while we appear to have really outpaced ourselves versus the 2020 year, it's important to look at the 2019 data included on those reports, because whereas likely this year we will hit our historic high gross deposit number somewhere around May 14th or 15th, last year our gross deposit high was June 5th of 2020. And so I give you that too, if you are one of those folks using just some good straight linear math to extrapolate some numbers of where we'll arrive at. It puts it in perspective given the change of May 1 versus June 1st of last year. All that being said, as we look at what we traditionally see as net melt, or the change between our net deposits and the actual census kind of students and seats, if you will, we would normally see about a net amount of 15 less than our peak in there. But this year we've had a lot more students who have requested extensions. And so I think it's fairly appropriate for us to estimate about an incoming freshman class of 1,040 given the data that we have today. And we still continue to do good work with prospective international students at the undergrad and graduate level, transfer students, and our on-campus and online graduate students. Thank you.
President Standiford, this is Bill Bailey, and I have a question related to that was just posed to me from a colleague who's not a senator. But he wanted to know if you were generally happy with the distribution of the deposits among the different undergraduate colleges. So it looks like we're heading in a generally good trend, but as far as different distributions among the colleges, your thoughts on that?
So I may lean on Justin a little bit on this, but one of the things that we know, and we're seeing this in our numbers, and I wish this wasn't the case, but the numbers are bearing that out, is the STEM areas are taking a little bit more of a hit. And that's partly, and engineering is one of them. That's partly because University of Illinois is our understanding is being pretty uber aggressive on some of the things that they're doing. So, I mean, ideally we'd like to see it spread out evenly across. It'll never play out that way in any one year. So we'll have to continue to adjust on that. For those that see the numbers, you'll see the two areas that are really seeing some numbers. And we think this is probably going to get our nursing and game design is exploding, would be the best way to describe it. And that's great. It creates challenges, right? Because then that particular program gets really stressed on resources. So, I mean, ideally, we'd love to see it spread a little bit differently. We don't get to make those decisions, the students do. But I do think, and Justin, help me on this, but I think we are seeing a little bit more of a hit on STEM, but I think that's partly the aggressiveness we're getting feedback on how University of Illinois operated.
Yeah, I'll answer that question broadly for Bill and the President Stanford just in a couple of ways. One was this year we saw a highly erratic over enrollment activity by the University of Illinois and by what you might consider the more flagship institutions of the state, like University of Illinois, Chicago as well. And they're being very, very aggressive with their STEM and calculus-based curriculums and programs, really aggressively admitting students directly with a lot less activity on the wait list and a lot more work up front, including not just admissions, but financial aid policies and offers that were out there. I think as we move into a greater focus with our university budgeting and strategy and activities, I'll be working more closely with deans to help set enrollment goals by college alongside with the provost and some of our planning activities to hopefully achieve more of a distribution that we're seeking and looking for. That paired along with marketing initiatives that are currently going on within marketing and communications, we hope to find a better balance holistically for Bradley as we talk about capacities and strategy in there. I think we'll see some really challenging things on the forefront too. And that's not just the demographic kind of cliff that we've been talking about, but the realities that folks like the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and Chicago are always going to get their enrollment numbers and flex their kind of demand muscles. And Bradley and like institutions and our group will work hard to preserve our enrollments and revenues. And we'll see really great strains on smaller privates and regional publics. And it'll be interesting to see just how much those regional publics and other privates are willing to sacrifice on revenues to maintain headcounts and viability in the future, and something we really have to plan to work through. But I think when you look at all those items collectively between plans individually with the colleges and our marketing efforts, I hope we can better shape the class at the institution. And I hope that our strategic plan and academic planning will guide some of those directions on how we want to shape them.
That was a very helpful answer. Real quick follow-up question, Justin, if you could speak to this idea then, if Illinois is being hyper aggressive, at least this year, do you expect for the STEM students, do you expect that to continue? And is that a group that we would then more or less give up on or continue to try to court?
I would think we would continue to try and court them. And I'll give you again, I don't want to take up the whole meeting, but I'm always happy to have some of these conversations. I think you'll see some of those folks digging in deep this year, but the reality is they cannot continue to over enroll like they have this year for out and future years. But we'll see more competition for the traditional residential full-time students that are in there. I think, Bradley, if you would go back 30 years even here, and this is long before my time at Bradley, we utilized some of our scholarship and leveraging models to really say a top student at Bradley or the University of Illinois, our scholarships would almost create price parity when you look at the expense of fees and residence halls and differentiated tuition at University of Illinois for business and engineering programs. And we really had a value proposition that was students who want a very particular type of experience come to Bradley versus the type of experience which is different and differentiated at the University of Illinois. And I hope that our work with polished branding and some of the other activities with our marketing and communication strategies and Huron and others will help us realign and take our message deeper into high school students and parents and community college and transfer students about what really differentiates Bradley and getting back to that distinctiveness and positioning ourselves both with what I'll say is an elite public in the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, as well as regional peer and aspirant privates. And so I say that thinking about Marquette, Loyola, DePaul, and Butler in that category of regional peer aspirants.
President Staniford, I was hoping that we could visit just a little bit about the recommendations posed by the Huron Company. Just a couple of things. I think everybody in this meeting can agree that our staff are just paramount to the operations across the colleges at Bradley. A couple of concerns that I have personally was that the data collected for the report was done pre-pandemic and before the involuntary and voluntary separations. So, for example, in my department, we have 2.5 staff members that we've lost. And so the current staff members are picking up that work, which kind of, you can imagine kind of, messes up that data that you would currently have. And also just kind of the concern that department chairs and staff members themselves really haven't had an opportunity to be a part of the decision making and kind of have a seat at the table. So I was wondering if you might be able to address how we might be able to change things to make this a little bit better system and to make sure that our staff members are being respected as they need to be.
Yeah, it's a good question. And that process has been evolving. And to your point, much of that was done pre-pandemic. And a lot has changed since then. And I'm looking a little bit at Cheryl's box, and I know Walter and Cheryl have been very involved in this conversation as well. I believe we've tried to make some adjustments based on the changes that we saw happening in real time. So the shifts that will be happening soon are designed to take that into account. Literally, Walter Sakahi and I were talking about this earlier today. The other thing we're sensitive to is that it's a big change. A lot of pieces are shifting. So as we shift into this model, we have to be thoughtful about the things that we're not doing anymore as well. There's a lot of what I would describe as administrative inefficiencies in the organization that we're trying to weed out of the organization. I think that will be helpful to do some of that. And we're going to give this, I think, I fundamentally believe this is the right model to be moving towards. I think it will work better than perhaps some people realize. And if we find that that's not the case, we can pivot again as well. So, but I feel fairly confident in saying that as we've thought through this, we've taken into account some of the changes that have happened in real time. And Walter, you've been much closer to this than I have. Would you mind commenting just a little bit on that?
Sure. I think an excellent example of what you're talking about, President Staniford, is that when we first started working with Huron, we were looking at creating some financial efficiencies as a result of the Huron process. And after the voluntary separation, we realized we had gained most, if not all, of the financial efficiencies that we needed out of that. And now what we're doing is we're doing some reorganization and some restructuring. A lot of that is around the idea that many of the things that we currently expect staff to do are going to be moved into more centralized areas, with the idea that there will be, I think the term that Cheryl has used is business partners, that department chairs and dean's offices and directors and managers can reach out to, so that, for example, the business office will have direct points of contact for us to reach out to, with the idea that we want to try and minimize some of the bookkeeping work that we currently have administrative assistants doing within departmental offices. And so the 4 centers that we are talking about include human resources, where the human resources work will be all moving into HR. There's going to be a marketing office. IT is going to have direct points of contact for department chairs and deans to reach out to, and the business office is going to as well. So we understand this is a change, and I understand in many respects it's a scary change for many people around campus. But our work with Huron suggests to us that we can create some process efficiencies by going this route. like President Staniford, I think I agree that I think this is the right direction for us to go. And if we give this a fair opportunity and a year from now we realize that we've made a mistake, we can change what it is that we're doing. This is not this isn't something that we would be stuck with forever if we find that it's not working.
A question. Are these, you mentioned that they have made the recommendation to reorganize 4 areas. Are these the only recommendations that Huron has made? Because the report that was shared, I mentioned this to you before, the report that has been shared with the faculty does not have any recommendations. Did Huron make any recommendations besides the 4 that you just mentioned?
Well, the ones that we're talking about are primarily around the restructuring and reorganization of work. So the creation of these offices are one of the things that we're working on. But I'm not aware of other sets of recommendations other than this kind of streamlining piece that we're working on. There are other pieces that they've been working on that I've not been directly involved with around things like processes with IT, et cetera.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of interject real quickly, Ahmad. The essence of this project has really been to create in the administrative groups centers of excellence to reduce our duplication, to reduce, to increase efficiency and productivity. And that really impacts just exactly what the provost said is, the HR, the marketing, the finance group. And as a sideline, they did do an IT study as well. And we're still sorting through some of, let me just say, we're sorting through some of their observations and recommendations there.
Part of this is that this is before you and the president arrived on campus. Last April, Huron made a presentation and they shared the draft of a report in which they had 6 specific recommendations. And so what I'm wondering is that if those 6 specific recommendations have been discarded, are we acting on them? Are there new recommendations that we are acting on? And so what happened to that original report?
I'm not.
And you were not there, so I don't think that you would know that. So I'm wondering where what happened between that and the report that has been shared with us.
So I think I've seen the report, but honestly, it's, as with all consultants, they come in and give advice based on what they're able to see from their perspective. And then we take that information and try to make sense out of what's really happening in the organization and adjust accordingly. So I can tell you we've not looked at those 6 recommendations and said that needs to happen. Nor would we ever do that with an external consultant, right? I mean, they're not us and they're not the ones that have to live with the results. So they'll come in, maybe make recommendations, and then we'll think about whether that makes sense for us. And I think what you're seeing with what we're doing with the Huron is saying, okay, we hear everything you've said. Here's what we think makes sense for us. And to the original question around the workload and such, I'll be the first to say that if we made these changes in structure, but didn't change how we do work processes, it won't work, right? Because it'll be overwhelming. But I've joked, I actually signed more things and was doing more things physically here than I've done in like a decade. So we've got a number of processes that I've looked at and gone, oh, wow, okay, that's, there's another way that is far less burdensome to everybody involved. And centralized services is one way to get to a lot of that. So instead of having everybody having to be an HR expert on certain pieces, no, let's have a few people that are trained really, really well on that, do that every day, all the time. That's all they do. And then unburden other areas with having to do some of those things. And so that's going to be key to making this work, right? If that doesn't happen simultaneously, which it will, the plan is for all that to happen simultaneously, the change in structure won't work, but it's the coordination of these two that's going to be really critical.
This is Jeannie Bukowski. Could I ask just a general question, I guess, for everybody involved? I think one of the primary concerns arises from this idea that, we deal with students on a daily basis. And one of the most important things that administrative folks do is help us with that. The administrative person is always in the office for a particular, for majors to walk in. We just had our LAS awards, and we have an award for an outstanding staff member. And it was brought up, everybody who's won this award basically is somebody who's probably been able to save the university from having students leave.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, when we talk about process efficiencies and we talk about consolidation, and I think we see what you're saying in terms of, okay, everybody does this here, this here, this here, and it would be great if there's a way to bring it together so things wouldn't be as burdensome. But I think what a lot of us are concerned with is if we're getting rid of, say, departmental staff, that those process efficiencies may end up costing us revenue because we lose X number of students per year, because there's nobody in that office to help them out, who knows them, who invites them in, right? So I think that is kind of the crux of a lot of the concern. So I wonder if that piece of it has been considered in process efficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
So we have talked about this as a point of conversation, and I'm going to be honest with you in that I've been to a lot of institutions. I've worked at a lot of institutions, and there is value. There's no doubt about it. But the connections that the students make with the faculty are really the connections that make a difference in terms of keeping and connecting students to the campus. Absolutely, there's value in having the staff connect with the faculty, connect with the students, but it's not the most important thing they do, and it's not the most important connection that the students need to make on campus. There is some trade-off, but I don't see evidence that that students are going to depart the institution as a result of these kinds of changes. Again, I understand this kind of change is very difficult. It's a very different kind of way of looking at the institution and the work of the administrative assistants. There's no doubt about it. But I'd also say there's some changes that we as an institution have to make. If we don't make them, we're not gonna change the direction and future of the institution in terms of our ability to support the work that we need to do.
Yes, my concern would be, and I appreciate all the points being made. My concern would be perhaps we might not lose droves of students, but we might lose droves of staff once this is implemented. We have staff who have been with us for a long periods of time, and for their days to be considerably different than what they're doing now, their tasks to be considerably different, for the individuals that they once worked with very, very closely, for that to change pretty much overnight. I'm very, very worried that we have some very valuable staff members who will choose to leave us. And I think that would be horrible for the university, And so these are our friends, our family. I know that it's a business, but they are valued people, and they just need, like I said, a seat at the table, because they've really not been, they've not really had that opportunity. They filled out a survey. There might have been a couple of conversations, but there's been no forums. There's been no real opportunity for them to wrap their heads around this. So I'm just really, really very concerned that they're not receiving the respect that they really do, that they really do deserve.
So among the things that is going to happen is that we're building transition teams so that the colleges have input in and can make a plan around how the nature of the work is going to be moving forward and how the work is going to change. And that those teams will include representation from the staff. And so they will have input on the nature of the work as it moves forward.
Will those teams also have representation from faculty who?
Yes, in fact, yes, they will. We moved the transition process. This announcement hasn't come out yet, but we were originally going to start the transition the week after graduation. In conversation with the deans, they pointed out that the department chairs need a break and wouldn't be able to participate in the process if we didn't, or would be reluctant to participate in the process. So we moved it to June 14th as the beginning of this transition period, so that we knew that department chairs would be here for orientation sessions and would be available to participate in the meetings for this process change.
Hey, Walter, department chairs won't necessarily be here for orientation. Somebody has the administrative contract. It depends on how the department functions.
Well, it's going to be representation from the department chairs, so it's not going to be all the department chairs included. But as I talked with the deans, we expected that there would be department chairs around.
So I've been through one of these kind of sort of transitions before, and I understand and appreciate the anxieties. I will say that it's very much human nature to focus on potential losses, and we're all going to be sensitive and should be sensitive to the changes that people are going to experience and the potential losses with this. The piece that I don't think folks are fully feeling yet, and I don't think you will till you get there, is there will be some really awesome gains as well. I suspect there are a number of people that are being asked to fill out a bunch of HR forms and doing budget stuff, that if they don't have to do as much of that, that's going to be a really good day for them. Now, they don't know that, I mean, we haven't shifted to that yet, so they're not feeling that change. But I know in one of the cases I was involved, that the not having to do some of that. And by the way, there are people that get really excited about budget stuff. So we have those folks on campus. So let's let them do that work. And then for those that's not their sweet spot or something they're passionate about, let them do some other things. So some of that will be sorting some of that out. It won't be seamless. Not everybody's going to be thrilled with the way everything plays out. Not naive about that. But I do want to recognize that there's going to be some pleasant surprises in some of this as well. Some of the things that folks have had to do in the past because of the way we were structured and the way we were doing our work, and the fact that some of this was being, quite frankly, some of the stuff that should have been done more centralized was being shoved out into the departments. When some of that goes away, that's going to be a pleasant surprise for some folks as well. It's going to be a big change. I don't want to be naive about that. It's going to be a big change, but pluses and minuses in a lot of different directions.
May I ask if similar parallel efficiencies are being examined in the executive suite?
We've already done a number of those efficiencies, and probably the best example is on the the second floor of Swords, where we've got the president's office and supporting supporting the president plus 3 VPs with some support from my office as well. In the past, we had more support up here, and we've eliminated several positions up here.
So, but the positions that you've eliminated are all these similar, some of the lowest paid people in the university?
Well, we don't have hourly staff up on the 4th floor. And understand, nobody's losing their job out of this process, right? The savings came out of the voluntary separations. And so now what we're doing is we're moving some people around, but nobody is going to lose their job out of this as a direct result of this. There may be people who've gone through, for example, improvement plans and things like that. That's ongoing always throughout the university. But this process is not resulting in anybody losing their jobs because we already gained the savings out of the VSIP process.
So just to clarify, and I'm sorry if I missed this, so this process will start, is it June 14th that this will?
Yeah, and the idea will be that we'll start meetings around this and have the colleges have those conversations about restructuring work starting the week of June 14th.
And for the admin group, like the HR, the marketing, the technology, that's going to be May 24th, just FYI.
Question about where you keep talking about the colleges and the colleges consuming, but I don't hear any words about the library and the library faculty and the library staff who consume HR, who consume budgeting, who consume, all of those things, who filled out the Huron report and then have got no response back about what the library's faculty and staff responses to the Huron report were. So I just feel like, we've got people who are like going to be filling out HR requests and things like that. And if things are changing, are we on the plate?
Well, we're including the library in this process as well.
Okay.
It's the communication process hasn't always been perfect through this, but yes, the library will be included because in order to take advantage of the changes in some of the centralized structures, the library will have to do some of this work as well.
Cool. I'm actually kind of excited, but we've had null response. So okay. Null response means everybody's a little anxious. So.
I have one more follow-up, and this is possibly pretty specific to those of us in STEM, but we all understand and appreciate the need for streamlining and efficiency. However, when you're doing research, delays are a big problem. Delays in being able to place orders, a delay of a week when you're working with a student for 12 weeks in the summer is a big problem. Sometimes there are delays on even receiving the orders, and the nature of research is that you may not know you need to order a new chemical until you get the data, that day and realize you're looking through the data and you need to purchase something the next day. Those are the sorts of things that a lot of us, I'm sure my colleagues could back me up on this, are pretty concerned about. And how can we balance the need for streamlining and efficiency with the need for, our scholarly pursuits to move forward at as fast a pace as possible?
Couple things here, Christy. One is I suspect currently you're experiencing delays that are burdensome because of the approval processes that we're going through, and I'm hoping that some of the approval processes will go away as we come into the next year. We've created at least a little bit of efficiency around that. Second, it's my hope that we can actually make this much more efficient by eliminating some layers within this in terms of not having, for example, to come through the provost office for this, being able to go directly from your office or from your chair's office to the business office would be among the things that I would like to see us be able to move to. You'll have your budget as long as you're living within the budget that you have, then trying to eliminate some of the layers that we have in between.
Exactly.
That would be wonderful.
That is a big intent of what we're trying to do in a lot of this as well, is we're a very layered organization right now. And I'd get really excited if we don't need to be as layered.
I don't like cutting off debate and questions on this, but I'm concerned that senatorial patience may be expiring and we may lose a quorum when we need it to seat the new candidates. Tim Kelso, you've had your electronic hand up for a while. Did you have one last question or was the hand up by accident?
Well, I'm not a senator, so I was hoping I could be recognized.
Can we have a motion? I move that Tim Kelso be recognized to speak before the Senate. All in favor,
Second.
say aye. Thank you, Daniel.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye. Try that one more time.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tim, you may speak.
Oh, thank you so much. I really want to acknowledge what President Standiford had to say about us being, having losses be very salient as opposed to gains. But I'm reminded of this. There's an analogy where during World War II, they were looking at the planes that came back and where were all the bullet holes in the planes, and we should probably reinforce those areas. And then it turned out it was a big expense and made the planes heavier and harder to maneuver. But it turns out that those weren't the right planes to be looking at all. The planes to be looking at were the ones that didn't come back because they got shot in a critical place and never returned to the base to begin with. And I've been chair of the psychology department this is the end of my 6th year. I think we've had one complaint make its way up to Provost Sakahi in all this time. And I can assure you that we have so many students that come in needing assistance in crisis. And that administrative assistant is the student-centered, front-facing person who solves crises in real time. It's almost like I am nobody's mom in the Department of Psychology, right? Our administrative assistant becomes the departmental mom. These are people that they just solve student anxieties. And the problem around streamlining is that if there's 14 units in LAS, there's 14 different ways about how we prioritize course enrollments, how we manage wait lists, how we deal with our service obligations. And I'm just deeply skeptical that a streamline is going to be able to have the institutional knowledge to be able to solve problems in real time. And if it's not that person, who is it going to be? And so I'm very deeply skeptical that that we're going to be able to serve students, our first priority, in meaningful ways if we dismantle how we've historically done that really important role. So I like hearing that Walter says that we can undo things that we do possibly, but I would anticipate that you might have a few more direct complaints coming to your office because we won't have that frontline sort of a triage expert.
Thank you, Tim. I understand what you're talking about, and I certainly understand your concern. It's my hope we can work through all of this and make this work. I've been a department chair and I know what you're talking about, but I also believe we've got to change some of the ways we work.
I'm going to declare President Standiford's portion of the agenda completed and ask the provost if, Walter, do you have anything you'd like to add?
So I've got 2 things. I actually had a list of
2
about
minutes.
4 things. Okay, I can do that. One, the dean searches that we have ongoing remain in process. Progress has been a bit slower than anticipated. We'll inform the campus as we finalize these searches. 2, the HLC visit appears to have gone well. Exit interviews with the members of the committee was as smooth as I could have hoped for. They were really quite generous in their positive comments about the institution. And so again, as I've done at almost every meeting for the last year, I want to thank Molly Klusky and Jenny Greening-Burge for their leadership of the work that our team did around the HLC visit. And that's it.
Thank you, Provost Sakai. Anybody have, we can entertain about 2 questions for the provost if anybody has anything else they'd like to ask him.
Hi, this is Cecile Arquette. I do have a question. A couple of months ago, it was brought to this body some issues of inequity in course loads. And at that time, we were told that it was tradition that certain folks have a much higher number of courses that they teach. Now, I've been here for 16 years, and I've been teaching a 4-4 with one release time per semester, so generally a 3-4. And others of my colleagues across the campus do not have as much as I do. And that's pretty standard in EHS, for example. And so I'm wondering about this business of its tradition, because at the time we were told, well, it's tradition that this is the way it is. And let me just finish here. And that it was going to be looked into. And so we have another semester coming up, another academic year coming up, and I again have the same course load as do many, many of my other colleagues. And I was wondering if we could get some clarity on that, please.
So first, I regret that answer. It was a bad answer. I don't have a great answer yet. However, I don't know that I spoke with all of the dean candidates about this. I spoke with 2 of the dean candidates about this. I believe that we can get a solution to this out of the process that we're going to be going from around in incentive-based budgeting. The college is generating quite a bit of revenue, and I think we can reinvest that. We're not at a point right now because of the fiscal situation that we're in, but I believe that as the college, as we move to incentive-based budgeting, the college has, in essence, control of its own money, that I can work with the next dean to change this. And so I have an idea about how to do this, given the direction we're going with incentive-based budgeting. I simply don't have an answer in the short term in terms of my ability to solve this. But I apologize. It was a bad answer on my part. I'll admit that, and I was caught off guard, and I shouldn't have given that answer.
Thank you. Hearing nobody else jump in immediately with another question, I will declare Provost Akahi's time completed for today. And ask CFO Cox if she has any additional comments she'd like to add to what she's already contributed to the meeting today.
I'm good. Thank you very much. Just working on budgets.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Matt, if I may, Danielle Glassmeyer here. I'm not sure who to direct this to, but it was reminded, I was reminded during this week that there's faculty all over campus who have letters that were signed by Provost Akahi some years back promising pay equity with the market. So that initiative was stopped. We had that understanding that we all needed to pitch in. So as we are moving forward and turning corners and so forth, I promised my constituency that I would ask if that outstanding and long-standing obligation and promise from the university has been budgeted and when it will be honored.
I will tell you, we're going through budgeting processes now, and we're doing our best to meet the expectations of the board. That particular initiative at this juncture is not part of my budget or our budget.
As a follow-up, there was a when in my question that I'd like to pull out and emphasize a little bit. When will it enter the budgeting process?
There's 2 pieces on this that we've been talking about, Danielle. It's a good question. We actually talked about this, came up a little bit in the senior leadership team this morning. We've got issues that we want to eventually look at on the faculty side as well as on the staff side. And we've talked about, I don't have a good answer to you right now. I'm not gonna promise a deadline that I don't feel confident on right now. but it's something we're talking about, how and when we address that. The other thing that's happening in higher education right now, which we'll need to get our heads around, is partly because of this year, the whole market is reset to some extent. So when we look at this again, we probably need to be thoughtful about doing another analysis as to where the inequities exist, because I'm not sure. I suspect some that were there are still there that we need to deal with, no doubt about that. There may be some new ones we don't know about that have emerged, and there may be some that don't exist anymore. So there's just, that's something we're gonna have to look at in more detail.
Just to clarify, while it was a unidirectional letter, it wasn't offered as a contract with co-signing. It is an agreement that was put forth that people have made plans on and budgeted on. So the fact that the market has reset, I guess that's a valid thing, right? But there were numbers, specific numbers that were stated, the notion was that they would pay out over 5 years. At the time that they were put forth, the salary initiative, it was our understanding that those initiative monies had already been budgeted in. And they're probably, well, I won't, and I'll just stop at that.
So I'm sorry to say they probably were not budgeted in. So the budget we inherited did not have those in there. So, and we're finding a lot of messiness on that, to be blunt, that we're still trying to clean up. And so it doesn't mean we can't go back and look at it, but I just want to be honest and open about this. The budget I've seen and the numbers I've seen never accounted for that. So we'll have to think about how we go back and look at that, but it's as of right now, it was never there. And Cheryl, tell me if I'm off on that, but I think that's accurate in terms of what we saw. So it's
this is actually the first I've heard of it. So
doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, by the way. I want to be very clear, right? Doesn't mean that we can't, so well, I'm trying to be thoughtful about how I say this. We've got some messiness where we've been working on all year on the finance budget front would be the best way to describe it. And we've had a number of surprises of things we've had to go back and clean up and account for that never were accounted for. And some things that quite frankly were accounted for on a revenue side that never should have been accounted for. It's another one we're dealing with. So we're doing some cleanup work on this. And I would be very reluctant to talk about what we're getting the house in order. But before we start talking about significant changes in a particular direction, I think we need to do a little bit more of a getting the house in order. I think we'll have that I think we'll have a much, much better sense by fall. And I think there's a lot that's going on right now that will help us get our head around this. And I know this wasn't the nature of your question or your comment, but I do have to give a shout out to Cheryl and her group. I sleep better now today because I actually trust our numbers. And I feel like we're pretty clean on where we're at, but we're still doing some cleanup work. And now what we've got to do is they've kind of recast and cleaned up the budget, but we were doing that during a COVID-19 environment. And now we've got to figure out what that looks like in a regular budget. And we're also very sensitive to, and I will give a shout out to your provost because he has been aggressive about saying, hey, a lot of things don't build the budget based on this last year because there's a lot of things, faculty travel, a bunch of other things that we had to cut out because of COVID that have to be back in. And those are coming back into the budget. We're working those back in, but we're still in the process of cleaning that up and rebuilding it.
Could I
And
jump
if it makes
in
you
here?
feel better. That sounds unsatisfactory to me as well.
We have about 2 more minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
Christy,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
jump in. Maybe I misunderstood you, but if the 5th year of the salary initiative was a surprise, that would be one of the most dumbfounding things I've ever heard in a university senate meeting. And there's not enough time to explain how important this issue is, but all I can emphasize is that many faculty were found to be underpaid by large amounts of money, and fixing that over 4 years penalize the ones that were furthest away the most. Extending that to 5 years made that problem worse. I understand no one expected COVID, but this is an extremely significant problem. I know there are a lot of issues on campus, but I think this has to be a very high priority.
This is also an interesting conversation following the NPR story that is talking about a surplus in 2 years.
And when we get to that, that's something we are hoping to get. Once we get the budget balanced, these are inequities we can tackle, right? So it's actually, they're tied in a positive way. The quicker we get the finance house in order, the quicker we can start tackling some of these issues that are critical, not just important. I agree with you, critical. And yes, it's on the staff side. On the faculty side, it's also on the staff side too, by the way. We see it and we feel it on the staff side as well. Obviously, many of you would be more familiar on the faculty side, but we've probably got some work to do on the staff side here as well. And I want to openly acknowledge that. And this is partly why we're working very hard to get the budget under control as quickly as possible so that we can start making headway in these critical areas. You cannot do that in a deficit, right? I mean, that just spins you out of control. That's a death spiral. So you got to figure out a way to get your handle on the deficit. And then once you do, those are exactly the kind of critical investments we need to make going forward. And so so Teresa, to your point, it actually is tied into, we've got to get the ship. That analogy is not going to work. We got to get the budget under control so that we can make these critical investments that are pivotal. I'm with you, Chrissy. These are not subtle things. And I should say, it's not a surprise that study had been done. Where the surprise is that it was, and what we're finding is, it was never put in the budget. It was never in the budget process, and that's something we need to be cleaner about.
What I'm about to say is probably going to sound really rude and disrespectful. And I know that you're not shirking responsibility for Bradley's obligations, right? I know that you've just clearly said that that's not what you're doing, right? You're owning it, right? But as I see presidents cycle in and out, as I see executive suites cycle in and out, this is becoming something that's honestly, I need blood pressure medication.
Yeah. That's not, I don't find that disrespectful, Danielle. I don't blame you for that, right? That has been a bit of a seesaw, if you will, or back and forth. And I have a passion for getting us stabilized quickly so that we can start making these key investments that gets us back to the strength that we have and builds on the strengths that we have as an institution that are being pressured because we haven't done a good job of managing some of these issues. So this is a painfully blunt conversation on both sides of the whatever this is, the virtual environment. But I hear you, and it bothers me as well. And we're working aggressively to try to get to the point where we can make some positive impact on these things.
This is Kyle DiZappo, and I just wanted to say I'm just so glad that this subject has come up, because to hear the CFO say she had never heard of this before is disturbing. Now, what you're saying is we're going to start working on this. I'm just glad that the CFO now knows that this is an issue and that this has been something that's been on the table for so many years.
Again, I hate to put a damper on the discussion, but we do have other business to get to today. So thank you, all of you, for your comments. I do think that important information has been shared here.
I agree. Yep.
Before I complete this meeting, remind you what's going to happen in the special meeting. Andy Kelly will be conducting the first part of that meeting. He'll be chairing the first part of that meeting as chair of the Senate Elections Committee. And the first part of the agenda is to elect the Senate officers for the 2021-2022 academic year. Let's see what else. I was going to remind folks of something else. Oh, yes. The members voting on that, for those positions are the senators for next year. So if you are not a senator, if you're not going to continue as a senator for next year, you may sign off in a few moments. On the other hand, as usual, if you would like to stick around for the entertainment value of the elections, you are welcome to do that. So we will see if these are old Soviet style elections or perhaps something more interesting. And with that, I will consider a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Ahmad, I need a motion, Ahmad.
Oh, so moved. No, somebody did.
Could I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. And Andy Kelly.
Those of you who've done this before know this should go pretty quickly unless there's some kind of a problem. I know there are many of us who have to go to an event after this, so I will start up really, really quickly. So I'm going to start by asking if there are any nominations for the position of president for the 2021-2022 year.
This is Tom Cardy. I nominate Matthew Tim to be president the following year.
Are there any more nominations for the position of president? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of Matt Tim as the president for the 21-22 year, please say aye.
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 Sorry,
Any-
Matt.
Any opposed, say nay. Matt Tim is now the president for the coming year. We will move to the vice presidential election. Are there any nominations for the position of vice president for the 21-22 year?
Yes, this is Cecile Arquette. I would like to nominate Teresa Drake, please.
Are there, I think we maybe need to get a second. So I'm sorry about I hope that doesn't mess up Matt's election.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a second. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice president? Hearing none, we'll move to the election. All in favor of Teresa Drake for vice president, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And Teresa Drake is the vice president for the next year. We'll move on to the secretary position. Are there any nominations for the position of secretary?
I'd like to nominate Yufeng Liu.
Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, all in favor of Yufeng Liu serving as secretary for the 21-22 year, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone is opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it, and Yufeng Liu is the secretary for the coming year. And then last election, do we have any nominations for the 2 at-large positions?
This is Bill Bailey. I nominate Eden Blair for one of the at-large positions.
Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for at-large?
Are we doing the at-large representative to Senate exec?
Yes, and we're doing them together.
Okay, I nominate Travis Stern.
Is there a second for that? Okay.
Earl George.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, all in favor of, actually, I'll do the election one at a time. I forget in case there's somehow an objection. All in favor of Eden Blair as one of the at-large representatives for the coming year, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Okay, Eden Blair is elected as one of the 2 at-large members. And then finally, for Travis Stern as the other at-large member, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. Travis Stern is the other member, and that ends the elections for the coming year. I think I will hand this over now to the new president. This is a big surprise, and we'll go back to the new president, Matt Tim. And I'm
Thank you
done.
for conducting the elections. Thank you to the Senate for supporting our Soviet-style election for another year. And the only other thing I'd like to point out is that there is a list in the agenda for this meeting of new members of Senate level committees that are where the Senate Elections Committee conducts those elections. That's in the minutes already. It's in the agenda already. You should have received a copy of that agenda. I did not make up slides for this meeting. And with that, thank you for your support and your patience to get to this point, both of this meeting and of the academic year. We should be having a party out on the quad to celebrate, but it's still COVID time. So we will see you next academic year. You may vote with your mice.